Good evening, everyone. Welcome. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. So good evening and welcome to our first ever district-wide safety symposium. Thanks first to our own Stash Przmilski for recording this event for those that could not join us in person. And thank you to our board members in attendance, Trustee Schneider, Trustee DeLullo, Trustee Travis, and I think I've got everybody. So safety is the top priority here at the Mahopac Central School District. Over the past 2 years, under the leadership of our District Administrator for Safety, Security, and Compliance, Mr. Troy Bilyeu, we have made many enhancements to our buildings to improve the safety for our students and staff. A safe school environment creates stability and predictability, which helps students feel secure and ready to learn. When students know their physical and emotional safety is prioritized, they are less distracted by worries or anxiety, allowing them to focus on their learning and participate more fully in the classroom. Enhanced safety measures, which you will learn about this evening, contribute to a positive school culture where students feel supported, respected, and engaged, ultimately leading to better academic outcomes and overall well-being. Tonight, you will hear from many of our community partners who support our schools to make them as safe and secure as possible. I thank each and every one of them for giving of their time, not only tonight, but all of the time to the well-being of our students. I value and appreciate these strong partnerships, as well as each individual here tonight for your commitment to keeping the Mahopac Central School District community safe. Now I turn this evening over to Troy Bilyeu, our District Administrator for Safety, Security, and Compliance. And thank you, Troy, for your vision and your efforts, which made this symposium a reality.
Thank you, everyone. So I welcome you all here tonight, and especially the relationships that we've built within our community. Thank you for being here. This slide here talks about how the vision I had was to really look to build a relationship with our community, because it's going to be a community that keeps our schools safe. And you can see that we've built many relationships with individuals up here, not only from within our community, but from the state level, and also with some vendors that we've put some enhancements within our buildings. One of the big things also is our parent volunteers. So we have parent volunteers that serve on our site-based committees at each of the building levels, as well as our district-wide safety committees. And so they play a big role in keeping our schools safe as well. What I'd like to do right now is I'm going to hand it off to our Director of Technology, Benjamin August.
Thank you. And thank you to Troy for putting together this wonderful evening, and to Superintendent Tona for her support. I'm here to talk about our physical security developments that have been made throughout the last few years. And it's important to understand that these developments are made in the context of the wider mission of the Mahopac Central School District, which is to create schools of excellence. The technology department has the task of enabling innovative learning for all of our teachers and students, and we do that by operating and supervising the physical security systems which depend on our technical infrastructure. Some examples of recent developments which have hooked in our physical systems are new electronic locks that depend on programming for staff IDs, which can also be shared with our law enforcement partners. These IDs can be programmed to allow for access, enabled or disabled based on security conditions, and can respond in real time to our physical access needs. During a safety event, and particularly in the event of a lockdown where we need to have instantaneous control of the physical access of our settings, we have speakers installed which will flash and alert students and staff to the new safety condition. And blue lights on the exterior of the building have been programmed to activate warning people to stay away when our buildings cannot be approached. We also have door locks in place that will electronically lock and enable law enforcement to access the physical building when needed. And with that, I'll pass it back to Troy.
So just to add one thing about that Ben said, you know, when we go into a lockdown event, from the exterior, you're going to see the blue lights flashing. That tells everybody to move away from the campus. There's a situation happening. Ben also talked about how inside the building, we have both an auditory signal where it's saying lockdown, lockdown. There's also lights that are flashing too to bring attention to the PA system. And one of the big things that we did is all staff have these IDs to swipe in and swipe out of the buildings at certain times. When we go into a lockdown, these IDs for staff go dead. They're not able to come into the building. But what happens is the IDs turn on for our law enforcement. So we've worked with both Putnam County Sheriff Department and Carmel Police Department in ensuring that each of their officers have their IDs that they use from their departments to access our buildings during a time of need. So it was a great relationship on that. One of the other things we worked on is Armored One. And along with our sheriff, Kevin McConville, we have an agreement where through Putnam County Sheriff Department, we're having monies to help implement our Armored One Phase 2 that is upcoming for the new school year. We completed Phase 1, and what it is, it's a film that goes over the windows. Phase 1 was on the main entrances, and what it does is it's not bulletproof, but it will actually impede anyone trying to break through the window to get into the building. And I've got a short little video here I'm going to show. There's a little content warning there, but we'll click it on right now. This is what we have installed. So as you can see from that presentation, what we've installed will actually create time for law enforcement to get to our school buildings and apprehend the person before they have entry into the building. Phase 1 is completed, where we have all of the major doorways in all of our buildings district-wide, where it's completed. Phase 2, we're looking to do the rest of the doorways and the cafeteria area. So with that, we're now going to move on to something that we implemented this year. It's got a lot of great press on it, and law enforcement including, is our CRG mapping. And with that, I'm going to introduce Austin Sprague.
The entrance is by the track. I'm sorry, on the south side of the school. South side of the gymnasium, is that correct?
First responders are expected to transition from routine activities to emergency activities in a matter of seconds. So in those complex times, we have to put into their hands something that is simple to use in the systems that they already use, because it's probably the most dangerous and most stressful time of their life.
Most people expect that all of the first responders in their community are going to automatically know where the middle school gym is, or the art room, or the athletic hallway is in their local school, and that's honestly not the case. Most people have a challenge navigating at their school during back-to-school night, let alone the challenge that a first responder faces when they're under a lot of stress and they have to navigate a big building like that.
I'm happy the video cuts off where it does because I show up later and I don't look nearly as cool or strong as the Armored One guy. But my name's Austin Sprague. I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Critical Response Group. My life prior to CRG is I spent 8 years in the Marine Corps in Special Operations, deployed a number of times, and it's the same persona you'll find at everyone in our leadership structure. So we all were in Special Operations military, or retired out of 20, 25, some 30 years in law enforcement, EMS, or fire services. And we wanted to take what we learned about how do you communicate on a deployment overseas in a mission setting. There's a lot going on, there's a lot of resources, there's people in different uniforms and different technology, and we need to move through a site we've never been to before and conduct something. It actually looks pretty parallel to what first responders face here. But rewinding a little bit, so what we had in the military was a practice called a GRG, a gridded reference graphic. It just was a way we mapped an area, we labeled the features on top, and we put a battleship type grid so you can easily reference a specific area on that site or map. This isn't just a best practice or a recommended thing. This is essential for every mission we do in the military. You have to have a GRG to plan for a mission. You have to use one during a mission to communicate. You debrief with a GRG after. So for the world we come from, you might not think about maps every day. We think about maps a lot. And they're all over our person. We use them all the time. This is the same technique they used to plan and execute the raid on Osama bin Laden's compound, the most famous mission in our community in the last 20, 25 years. Just to call out that this is a mandatory and essential practice in the world we come from. And as the founders of CRG left that service and were looking for the next mission in life, what they realized is that there's a parallel problem set facing first responders when they show up to navigate, say, a high school in a time of emergency. So how it looks like what we faced overseas, even though it's here at home, is that they're often working in a joint environment. So they're working with other agencies, some of whom they may know and work with every day, some of whom they've never met before, and they're just showing up in the parking lot for the same time. Often different uniforms, often on different technologies, and it's a time-sensitive environment where they need to make really important decisions about how they navigate through that site and how they communicate about that site and what's going on and where they need to get to. But what they lacked that we had in the military, we had GRGs as our foundational tool for navigation. We found there's no standardized practice for mapping for first response here in critical infrastructure in the US, particularly in schools. And what you'll find instead, if it's a school that we haven't mapped, is usually the floor plans, the blueprints of that school stuffed in a binder. And that binder is unfortunately usually on the shelf of an office somewhere. We know that's not the case here because Troy's done a tremendous work here in this district, but this is kind of the status quo in most schools we see across the country. So we want to take those blueprints and floor plans, which are not designed for emergency response, pull them out of those binders, help them evolve into an accurate, usable map, and give those to first responders. We know that floor plans and blueprints aren't effective through the work we've done. We've mapped about 17,000 K-12 schools across the country. We add a couple thousand maps every single month. But if you look at any of the after-action reports, if you look at any of the literature of a violent event at the school, you'll find consistent citations that inaccurate, inaccessible floor plans leads to additional confusion, time on scene, bad decision-making at the tactical level. So how we fix that, we start with these floor plans. If you look at this, it just intuitively, this pops out to you, this isn't designed for emergency response. So it's not standardized in orientation. They're oriented a number of different ways. You can see the compass rose in the bottom right. Two, they're just frankly inaccurate. Doesn't matter if a floor plan was made the year before. We have yet to find a single floor plan anywhere in the country that's physically accurate to the structure of that building, let alone years, if not decades, of renovations or changes that happen to that structure that need to get captured back into the floor plan, and they don't. So the only way we know that they're going to be accurate is we send an on-site team who physically walks through the structure. So we walk through all the hallways and rooms of this building and every other building in the district and actually move and adjust walls and doors until it matches structurally. And lastly, we want to gather all the labeling. Site-specific labeling. What do you call this auditorium? What do you call this room? What do you call this conference room? What do you call the field outside? Because that's what you're going to use when you call 911 and try to convey your location. So we take all those three problems, orientation, accuracy, and labeling. We start with an outdated blueprint. We cut it out, rotate it north, place it over updated aerial imagery of that site. We send an on-site team who physically walks the structure. They fix the base layer structurally and gather all the site-specific labels. What's this room, this hallway, this outside area? We also want to plot the location for all the key features that can assist in emergency, like AEDs, trauma kits, roof access points, master key, keypads where law enforcement can gain access. And what that blueprint goes back looking like is something like this. So we would call this a collaborative response graphic, kind of our version of a GRG, but here for domestic response in the US. But our job isn't done once that map is created. What we do on the back end is we reach out to every public safety agency who might show up to a response at that school, whether that's police, law enforcement, EMS, special operations teams, state level assets, you name it. We want them to have the map. And more importantly, we want them to have the map on the tools that they already use every day. There's no world in which we can expect the police department from every county to all be in the exact same dispatching tool, 911 routing tool, incident command tool, mobile application. It's never going to happen. So we're kind of the Switzerland of the safety world. We make the great map. We put it into all those other systems free of charge, so it's right at their fingertips. You don't have to download anything new. You don't have to buy anything new. You don't have to learn anything new. Last couple slides here, I'll just show you what that kind of looks like visually at the 911 call center where your call goes when you call 911. Our map pops up automatically. So that telecommunicator, that dispatcher is getting an immediate information about where that call is coming from inside that structure. If you were to show up here in the auditorium, if you're like me and you parked all the way over there by the athletic fields, you're walking a good distance before you actually get to the right room. That's where we're trying to cut down. We're trying to make sure someone gets to the right parking spot, the right door, the right room in as little time as possible. Not just that first responder, but everyone who's coming after who needs to start moving resources, securing rooms, evacuating students and staff, depending on whether that's a fire, medical event, or a potentially violent event. Everything you can think of in vehicles, laptops, mobile devices, police, fire, EMS, doesn't matter. We want everyone to have that same map, so when I call out the auditorium or I call out room 12, it's the same on everyone's systems. And true of safety software as well, so actually a great connection tonight. We're going to be working with the Director of Technology to make sure these maps are plugged into the camera systems and really any other systems you deploy, panic buttons, visitor access systems, you name it. Last place where this can go, and we'd love to take it there if you'd like to, we'd come up and host a tabletop exercise free of charge, typically have teachers in the room, have 911, have police and fire, and just work through one, maybe two scenarios in a longer fashion using kind of pre-mission exercise protocols we did in special operations to just take your plan as it exists today and kind of pressure test it over a big printed map and moving some poker chips around. We found it's a great way in the community to connect people and work through some areas that can improve in the plan. So with that, it's my contact information if anyone needs to reach me for anything, and thank you very much, sir.
Did I hear you say 2 tabletops? Yeah, 2. 2. Okay, sounds great. So a lot of work we've done since the summer. I'm happy to say that we have successfully mapped every building in the district with a CRG map. We had a meeting back in the fall where we brought all law enforcement, including Putnam 911, Emergency Bureau System, the Fire Chiefs Department. We brought them all together because we want to have a common map that we use when we go into the school districts, school buildings, and we want to have a common language on how to navigate that building. What we're doing this semester 2, as we hit the spring, each school has about 2 lockdown drills left on the plate, and what we're doing is we're having the law enforcement navigate the building using the CRG maps during an actual lockdown, and we're placing an object, like we just did Austin Road, we had a little blue chicken that we placed near a room that we told them, okay, the suspect is by room 30. They then go in and they have to navigate the building to apprehend the suspect, which is in this case the blue chicken, and then report back to the command center before placing the students from a lockdown to a hold in place. We did that last week at Austin Road. It added 1 minute to the drill. So it was something that didn't really impact students and staff, but it was a great learning tool for our law enforcement that were there. Next, we're going to move on to Sarah Cervadillo.
Everyone. So I've been asked to talk about the online reporting portal that we call PCTAM in Putnam County. Sorry. The reason that we came up with what we are calling PCTAM is the result of Governor Hochul's Executive Order 18 that was issued in 2022 after the supermarket shootings up in Buffalo. She directed all counties in New York and in the boroughs to come up with a team, really to address the rise in targeted violence. In Putnam County, we've created PCTAM.net. It is, I'm going to show you. Okay. Our schools and our community members are utilizing this portal when they need to report a threat, when they need to report suspicious activity, if their child comes home from school and tells them something that is concerning. Most districts are utilizing this, but MAYAPAC is choosing this portal as their online reporting tool. I'm going to show you in a minute, this can be an anonymous report. This is what the form looks like. So the TAM objective, so it's a threat assessment, is the evaluation of a reported risk to public safety. We are immediately looking into this and investigating it. We do not want law enforcement to act on something if it is a mental health issue. A very high percentage of the threats we get in Putnam County are mental health related. So we are connecting students and adults to services that support them, that keep them out of the criminal justice system, and that keeps everybody safe. So that is the goal. We want to connect them with services immediately. We want to be talking about it immediately, and that's what this portal really does allow us to do. There's a certain group of people that we consider to be a core TAM. That's the district attorney's office. That's our schools, represented by BOCES. The Putnam County Sheriff's Office. My office is the Mental Health and Social Services Office, Bureau of Emergency Services, and the Department of Probation. If you were to report a threat, you will be asked very limited information. These are not required fields, so you can submit this anonymously. You do not have to give your information. We do receive some anonymous tips and some reports. We want to know the nature of the threat. If the person has directly threatened themselves or somebody else, any information that you have to corroborate the threat. Any behaviors, you're going to see that once you hit yes, you're going to have a little comment box so you can add something there. Sheriff McConville is going to talk about some of the behaviors that our educators and that the community should be paying attention to when we are concerned for public safety and the safety of the individual themselves. But really, we rely on our school staff, our educators, to identify when students are struggling. They know your children the best. They spend all day with them. They know what their typical behavior is. We do want to pay attention to that, and we are empowering our educators to speak up when a student does appear to be struggling. And again, we want to get the student the supports that they need immediately in working with the school. We've gotten some feedback on this TAM process. We've been live for about little over a year now. Putnam County has received we're averaging about 55 reports since October of 23. So for a county our size, that's a good number of reports. A very high percentage of them, like I said, are mental health related. All right, so we are going to the pctam.net website is publicized, I believe, on the MAYAPAC website. You can learn more about it through the sheriff's office, through my office. Again, this is not a Putnam County initiative. The governor directed each county to do so. This is just our interpretation of it and what we are doing locally in Putnam. All right, so we are going on to Jeff.
Thank you. Yeah, so this past fall, we had some parents, community members, we had some staff say, is there a way that we can look into something like anonymous alerts, or can we look into something like the Sandy Hook Promise? And we did look into those platforms, and we felt that after our review, we felt that PCTAM right here in our backyard, within our community, working with our agencies here locally was the way to go. And so as Sarah said, it's going to be a link that's going to be on each of our school websites. You'll see that there's a link for PCTAM, and then you'll see that there'll also be a link for 988, which is the suicide hotline. So more to come on that. Thank you. At this time, I'd like to bring up Sergeant Alfred Pizzuto, who plays a big role with our SROs and SPOs in the district. AJ.
How you doing, everybody? Is it good if I don't stand behind here because I have massive ADHD and I'm going to be moving all over the place? Can you hear me if I'm not sitting in the mic? We're good? Can I hold the microphone? Are we good now? Perfect. All right. So I'm Sergeant Pizzuto. I'm one of the Youth Bureau supervisors. I head the division that basically all your SROs and SPOs turn out of every day for your schools. Real quick history about me. Basically been in law enforcement now. This is my 19th year. The sheriff saw me fit to be a supervisor, promoted me, and gave me the Youth Bureau unit, mainly because I do have a lot of experience with SROs. I used to be one for about 5 years myself. So I am very immersed in the school population. Talking to Troy all the time, we work great together. But one of the things he wanted me to talk to you about today is what the role of SROs and SPOs is in the schools. So before I get into that, let's talk about what the difference is. I get asked that all the time. What's an SPO? What's an SRO? Well, our SROs are regular deputies, right? Same ones that would be out there doing traffic stops, answering 911 calls. They're full-out deputies, but they just happen to be stationed in the schools every day. We make it a permanent spot because the schools like to see, and the kids, the same face every day, right? Familiarity, right? Everybody gets comfortable with that person. So that's our SROs. No difference than our regular deputies you see out on the street. We give a lot of care into who we put and where because we want to make sure we have the right fit. It's very, very important we have the right fit in schools. We're not just throwing random people into these buildings. We want to make sure that we have the very best person for each district, and not just each district, but each school. It's a big thought process on who we're putting in elementary school, who we're putting in middle school and high school. So our SPOs, what are those? Those are the guys, they have the powder blue shirts, right? Those are retired law enforcement officers. They come back, they work for us in a part-time capacity. They're fully vetted by us, trained by us, outfitted by us, and they work in the schools. Same role pretty much as our SROs, it's just they have a little bit different title. They're a peace officer. Now, I'm not going to go into the difference between police officer and peace officer. We'll be here all night going into legal discussions, but for all intents and purposes, it's the same thing. Are we cool? Still tracking? Beautiful. All right. Thank you, guys. So all the same stuff. SPOs get all the same training as well as all our SROs. So firearms, use of force policies, medical training, so on and so forth. So what you're getting in both schools, same products, just little different, okay? So what is the roles now that we're clear on the difference? Well, obviously, as we all know, big one is safety and security, right? It goes without saying. We have, MAPAC is fantastic with this. Every building in their district has an armed person in the school, right? Because at the end of the day, let's be honest, the only way to stop a bad guy with a gun is what? A good guy with a gun, right? So they have every building is armed with some sort of law enforcement in that building. Very, very big testament to say that nowadays. So kudos to them. So beyond safety and security, what else do our guys do? Well, depending on the day and even the hour, could be a number of different hats they're wearing. They could be helping the administrators with some issue that's going on that's actually not law enforcement related at all. When I was an SRO, I would get pulled into the administrator's office. They commonly referred to me as the third assistant principal over in Brewster because I was helping them all the time with various things. They could be in a counselor's office, talking with the counselor about some issue with a student that may have some sort of emotional problem and trying to help that student get extra support through the county. Let me refer to my notes quick. They could be in a classroom, teaching. Our guys commonly are in classrooms teaching. Whether it be a criminal justice class, whatever it is. They're in the community of the school, in the fabric, walking around, talking and interacting with your kids. And it does a great thing. It really starts to get your kids open to the idea, especially when we start them off young in the elementary schools, that the police aren't there just to, reprimand us. They're there to help us. And you see a big change in the kids coming through the districts now on their thought of police. Hey, they're not here to write my parents a ticket or do this and that and the other thing. They're here to help me. Big, big difference in the thought philosophy when it comes through the district. Real quick personal aside, and then I'm done. So it's funny this comes up now because it just happened to me 2 weeks ago. I was at a deli getting some breakfast. As you can tell, I might like to eat a little bit. And a person comes up to me, rather big gentleman, and he's like, hey, you, Deputy Pizzuto, used to work at Brewster High School? Now, when someone asks you as a cop, if they know you, it could go either way. It could go good or bad, So I was like, all right, yeah, I am. Why? What's up? And he says, oh, my son is so-and-so. And I said, oh, I remember your son. And he sticks his hand out, shakes my hand. He goes, I want to thank you. And I said, why? Well, what happened? He goes, my son told me the only reason he continued to go to high school and didn't drop out was so he could go and hang out with you each day. So when I tell you the impact that we have in the schools that I didn't even realize I had is paramount. It is really, really phenomenal. So that's pretty much it. If you guys have any questions, I'll be around for a little bit afterwards, but that's it. All right?
And so as Sergeant Pizzuto talked about, the relationships that our SROs and SPOs build within our school community is phenomenal. With our students, our staff, our administrators, we are a better place because of them. And when we talk about relationships through Sergeant Pizzuto and also through Sheriff McConville, our district has a very strong relationship with the Putnam County Sheriff. An example of this would be a few weeks ago when we had that car chase that you guys read about coming from 84 through Carmel. Sergeant Pizzuto gets on the phone with me in real time during the car chase saying that they just put Carmel Central School District in a lockdown as the car passed through, and it's approaching Mayapack, and Troy, I need you to hold on to let you know what actions you may need to take within the district depending upon where the car turns. The car was stopped over by the firehouse on Route 6, so we didn't have to do a protective action, but it's that type of thing, that type of relationship that our school district has with law enforcement. So well done, thank you. At this point, I'm going to introduce and bring up our Sheriff, Kevin McConville.
Unlike Sergeant Pizzuto, I think I'll just stay stationary. We're talking about a triage team. We actually implemented this here working with the administration of Mayapack School, and it's proven to be a big benefit for everyone, including the students. And that's our goal, to make sure that the students and the community is able to function and attend school in a safe environment. So an effective triage team is multidisciplinary that evaluates concerning behavior and supplies specifically tailored strategies to prevent violence. Our goal is not to arrest everyone. Our goal, working with Commissioner Servidillo and the district attorney and the probation department and Frank Guglieri from BOCES and all the administration from the school, is to develop a pathway for treatment to an individual that has shown concerning behavior. Where and when appropriate, if an arrest is warranted based on the nature of the activities, we will then effect an arrest. But we still look to get that individual or those individuals into a treatment program. A multidisciplinary team has to be robust, and the only way it's robust is by communication. We provide continuous training to the schools Our SROs take the same training that Frank Gugliari from BOCES gives to the school administration, to the teachers. We're all on the same page. We all understand when we mention a term or an incident, what our actions are going to be and what pathway we're going to follow in order to get someone the assistance they need. And the triage team looks for significant signs associated with the pathway to violence. Ideation, the idea to do harm, planning and preparation, developing a plan and acquiring the means or capacity to do harm to others, and then implementation. So we look at every aspect of that to ensure not only is the school safe, but the community is safe. And as the commissioner alluded to earlier, we've had a tremendous number of cases, and a significant number of those cases have involved the mental health component. And our PC-TAM program has proven to be effective in addressing those issues. So I won't go on any longer, but we do work very, very hard to make sure this program is viable and that it constantly gets revised to meet the needs of the school, the student, and the community, as well as the student's family. We incorporate every aspect of it into our core team meetings, and we meet bi-weekly to review our cases, more often if the case is much severe, and we go from there. So thank you very much. I want to thank Superintendent Tona and the administrators, Troy and Commissioner Savadio and Frank. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheriff. And just to kind of build a little bit more on that, each of our buildings district-wide have identified triage teams. A triage team is comprised of an administrator, a clinician, whether it's a social worker or a psychologist, and law enforcement, which is usually our SPO and SRO. And as a team, whenever there's a threat that comes to our attention in a building, it's that triage team that goes into action to identify the threat, to go through an approach, which is known as CSTAG, and to determine whether we need to move forward with the threat or look to seek help. And so it's been a great relationship, a great effort. We've come together as a district. We've had superintendent conferences where we trained our administrators and our clinicians and invited our SROs and SPOs on the process, and we're moving forward, and it has helped to keep our schools safe. So thank you again. And I just want to say thank you again to Sheriff McConville on his promises with funding for the district when it comes to things like our CRG mapping and with our Armored One. It's been a great relationship. So thank you. I'm up next. Okay, so one of the things that I do at the beginning of the year, I send out a communication district-wide and on safety, and one of the pieces that I have in there is what's known as the shell. This is something that is important to understand. Our students are aware of it, our staff are aware of it, and it's important that the parents are aware of it too. And you'll see that SHELL actually stands for shelter in place, hold in place, evacuate, lock out, and lock down. This is something that there's going to be a slight change as we hit 25-26 school year. Lockout is now going to be known as a secure lockout, yes. Okay, but I just want to take a moment to briefly review this so that everybody is understanding of what it is. When a building goes into a lockdown, pretty much what we're doing is we have an active incident happening within the building. We want to try to keep students and staff safe. They are to take these corrective actions, and they are to stay hidden until physically released by law enforcement. That's why it's important that whenever we do a drill, we have law enforcement from the county that is there and from Carmel PD that is going in and releasing the students, just to kind of test our measures there. So that's a lockdown. Next piece is a lockout. A lockout usually takes place if there's something happening outside of the building. So in a lockout, we don't allow any individuals to leave the building or come into the building. We also allow, so in a high school, if you have period to period, students can go from class to class in a lockout. And we had an incident not too long ago where the high school went into a lockout because one of the goats over here came onto our property. So, or a ram or a goat, I forget what it was, but we had to take that corrective action. Shelter in place. So a shelter in place, a lot of times is maybe due to a weather-related incident that while school is in session, we need to keep within our classrooms. Sometimes we might look to move people from the classroom to the hallway, and we've practiced this in our drills. So if we have, say, a storm coming and it turns into a hurricane or a tornado, we're going to want everybody out of the classrooms, away from windows, in a section of the building where it's more secure and more protected for them. And so that's a shelter in place. Hold in place. So hold in place, what we're doing here is we're keeping everybody in the classrooms. At times, we have had experiences where someone fell in the hallway and they broke their leg, let's say, or they fell down the stairway, and we needed to keep everybody in the classrooms until the ambulance got here and was able to bring the person out of the building. So a hold in place is a measure that we use. A lot of the times, administrators are told to use a hold in place and then move on to make another decision on whether to go into like a lockdown or a lockout. So that hold in place actually buys us some time to make a thoughtful decision. And then the last one is an evacuate, more commonly known as, to a lot of people, as a fire drill or things of that nature. But in an evacuate, we're actually leaving the building, we're taking attendance, we have a system in place where we try to make sure that all visitors in the buildings are accounted for and that all staff and students are accounted for. So every drill that we do, there is attendance taken by our teachers, and we just equipped our ERT members with go bags. And these go bags actually have medical devices in them, and a lot of different things, a tourniquet, bandaging. And so if there was ever an incident where we had to evacuate a building like this and I only have 2 nurses, I actually have a team of 18 ERT members in this building that can assist. And so that's something that's great. One of the things I'm going to go on to real quick is I'm going to talk a little bit about our communication protocols. So one of the things that I heard from the community, and I've heard from the staff and from the administration, is we need to take a look at how we communicate and look to see how we can do things better. And I'm always into continuous improvement. And one of the things that I realized is, just from a system standpoint, we have a way of communicating through Infinite Campus, which is our student database system. And when we send a communication through Infinite Campus to the community, which is about 6,500 people, it took 80 minutes for that communication to go out. We realized in looking into this closer that if we use our school messenger for the same message, it takes 8 minutes. And so we've realized through this that, by having the right vehicle to get the message out, we'll ensure that all of our parents and our community gets the information in a timely manner. So that was an improvement we made. We also met with our administrative team, and we wanted to kind of categorize the type of communications we send out and how we send it out. So we're going to be going through Skill Messenger, but we don't want to oversaturate the community with too much information. And so therefore, if we're going to do a general announcement from one of our buildings, like a weekly update or a school dance, we're just going to go through an email on that, okay? If there was a situation or an incident update, like a few weeks ago we had someone come onto the middle school campus, we would do an email and a text. The text would alert you to look to your email. When we did this, some of the feedback I got from the community was we just did it as an email. And they said, Troy, if you do it as a text too, I'll be able to see that, okay, all of a sudden it's popping up on my phone, I'll go to the email. And so I heard that loud and clear, and moving forward, we're going to do that. When it comes to emergencies and delayed openings, early closings, early releases and closings, that's when all 3 venues are going to hit. So you're going to get a communication that's going to hit your email, your text, and your phone call. And so that's kind of how we're going to move forward with that. There's a few phases with this. So at any time there's an emergency, the first line of communication we're doing is internally with our administrators. So one of the biggest things we want to do is we want to make sure prior to that first student getting on the bus, which I found out was 6:20 a.m. for the high school, we want to have an initial update provided to the administrative team, and we want to have building actions in place if needed. Then during the school hours, we're going to update the situation for the admins. We're going to share details as they're confirmed. And we're also going to ask them to keep it confidential, because what we're sharing with them may impede an active investigation that's ongoing with law enforcement. And you'll see that we're doing this through text right now, and that's what we're using through the phones with our administration. But I'm working with our director of technology on seeing if we can use it through a different vehicle, an app, or things of that nature. And then we feel it's important that after school, we follow up with the admin prior to the end of the day. We provide details as appropriate. I reach out to law enforcement to see if there's going to be additional law enforcement officers at the building the next day, and any additional security actions that are needed. And we felt that not just a text is what we should do, but also do a Google Meet. So we get all of the administrative teams on a Google Meet prior to the end of the day to talk about what happened on this day, and then how we're going to move forward the next morning. And now the third piece of this is how do we communicate this to the community? And so kind of similar to how I laid it out with the administration, we want to make sure that everyone in the community knows that it's safe to go out to the bus. So we had an incident this past fall where there was a murder within the vicinity. Many of the parents reached out to me and said, we weren't sure if it was safe to go on the bus. And so we want to make sure that we're going to be proactive. We're going to send something out to the community prior to 6:20 a.m. We're also then during the school hours, as the updates become available, we're going to send that out. And again, email, text, phone call, right? This is all emergencies. So if we decide that we need to take a protective measure and place the building into a lockout, we're going to let you guys know. And then we're going to share details as appropriate. Sometimes people say to me, Troy, how come you didn't give me enough information? And again, I go back to like what I said to the administrators. I'm going to give you information, and the most important piece I can give you as soon as possible is that students and staff are safe. And that's what I'm going to do. And then as the information comes in and it's appropriate to share with you, I will share with you. And whether it's through me or whether it's through our superintendent, Christine Tona. And then by the end of the day, it's very important that we give a communication to the parents and share all the details that we have, share with them any security actions or initiatives that we'll do for the following day. And again, that'll be through email, text, and phone. So that by the end of the day, there's at least an update, maybe hopefully closure, but at least an update on how we're going to move forward into the next day. So this was something that I actually invited a few parents in to give feedback on this. I got feedback from our staff members and from our administrators, and I think it's a great way that we're going to move forward and improve as a district when it comes to this. All right. Another person that I've built a great relationship with is our Chief, Anthony Hoffman, with the Town of Carmel Police Department.
Thank you, Troy. Thank you, Superintendent Tona. Thanks for everyone being here tonight. As Troy said, my name's Anthony Hoffman. I'm the Carmel Police Chief, and I've been the police chief here for about 4 years. I've been in law enforcement for 26 years between the NYPD and the town of Mamaroneck and like I said, the town of Carmel. And fortunately, throughout my career, I've had the opportunity to become a police instructor, and I've been able to instruct on active shooter response. I've been able to teach cops. I've been able to teach in the schools. I've been able to develop exercises and drills. And when Troy came to me and said that he wanted me to present on this topic, parent expectations during emergency events, I took a little bit of a pause because my frame of mind is usually just law enforcement. And I thought, well, how can I get an accurate, non-biased law enforcement perspective of what parents expect from us in an emergency situation? My first thought was maybe solicit ideas from our social media outlets, Mayapack moms, but if I did that, I know we'd have enough material for our own symposium. We'd be here all night. So thankfully, I have a couple of family members that are educators that have kids in surrounding districts, and I picked their brain. And I said, let's talk about this. Let's really boil this down. And we got it down to the most basic levels of what parents expect from law enforcement in an emergency event, is keep our kids safe and keep the parents informed. And that is just such a simple concept, but it's not always easy. And to that point, I'd like to bring up a couple of lessons learned. And I'll bring up Uvalde, as Austin mentioned before. As I think we all know, the Robb Elementary School active shooter massacre that resulted in the deaths of 22 people, 17 school children. We all saw in the media, if we watched it, that the law enforcement response was significant. Unfortunately, the part of the response where command and control came in with the police chief there, it was inadequate. The police chief literally did not even have a police radio with him. All right? And it's one of the reasons why it reminds me to always carry, I literally have it in my jacket pocket. I bring it everywhere I go. So thinking back to our parent expectations, were our children safe that day? No. Collectively, law enforcement, we failed our kids that day. Also, if you look at Uvalde, were our parents informed? No. We saw in the media, we saw the parents literally getting into fights with law enforcement, being detained at the scene because they were not being provided any information as to what was going on. And then again, we failed in keeping our parents informed. I'll offer another incident, and this is one that we probably all know about if we're in the Mahopac community here. And I apologize, it's Mahopac for me, Mahopac. I'm a Mahopac guy, so bear with me. On October 2nd last year, 2024, they had a lockdown drill scheduled at Austin Road Elementary School. Troy was leading the drill. We're usually together on those days with law enforcement command, with the school administration. However, that day was a little unique. Troy was at the school, the superintendent was at the middle school for the health fair. Myself and Carmel PD, our command staff, were at a meeting elsewhere. And it was a little bit unique than the routine lockdown drill because the school district was testing a new internal notification system. When that lockdown drill was implemented, a notification erroneously went to the Mahopac High School principal's office. The Mahopac High School principal did exactly what he was supposed to do, initiated a lockdown. The schools on this campus, the middle school and the fall school, also went into lockdown. Law enforcement that was there, the sheriff's office, the SROs, the SPOs, did exactly what they were supposed to do. They went to investigate the issue. They made contact with the principal. They determined very quickly that this was an accidental activation because of the Austin Road drill. We had one of our officers here from Carmel PD, Officer Vincent Serio. He's a DARE instructor here in the middle school. He's in contact with me as I'm responding here. He's, Chief, we know it's an accident. We're confirming. We'll let you know. We're doing our thing. We're checking every room. We're clearing the building. Okay. I arrive on the scene. I arrive with members of the sheriff's office, Captain Shepperly from the sheriff's office. We get law enforcement teams in every building on this campus. We check every room. We clear it. Okay. Yes, it wasn't a real threat. No, there wasn't a threat of violence that day. But did we keep our kids safe? I think we did. And did we keep our parents informed? Literally, as I'm standing out in front of Mahopac High School and we're coordinating with the sheriff's office and other law enforcement officers, we had Brewster PD come in, we had Kent PD en route, Westchester departments were arriving. I'm in contact with our social media supervisor, Sergeant Makem, and I'm saying, we got to get a message out to the community. We got to let them know because everyone is blowing up my phone, letting everyone know, hey, something's going on at the school, we don't know what it is. So before the buildings were even clear, we got out a message on social media. This is an accident, an accidental activation. Law enforcement is clearing the building as per protocol, and everything's good. We'll give you an update. 10:55 a.m. Now this started about maybe 10:15. By 10:55, we were clear. Troy and I were in communication with the superintendent. We were sitting down, having a debrief, preparing our statements to the community. And we were able to get out press releases to the community within an hour or two, by 1 o'clock. So did we keep our parents informed? Yes, I believe so, as we're supposed to, as what the parents expect from us. And just an overview of public safety resources, all you have to do is look at the people who are presenting here. All these ladies and gentlemen here are dedicated, as we are at Carmel PD, to keeping the kids safe, to keeping the parents informed. And as Troy was just mentioning, with the school notification processes, the parents are kept informed. We're always striving to improve upon that. Like he said, you don't want to overdo it. You want to hit that sweet spot. You want to get the information out. You want to get it concise. You want to get it fast. We do the same thing in Carmel. We have a new notification system that the town uses. We have a robust social media presence, as does our other law enforcement partners with the sheriff's office, so we can get a message out to the community. So we are poised and we are strive to improve, to keep the community safe, keep the kids safe, and keep our community and our parents informed. And if you could just hit that last, I would be remiss if I don't mention the Safe Me program. This was developed in conjunction with Carmel PD's community relations team. Those officers are here tonight, and Mahopac SEPTO. And what this is for those in our special needs community, it's a sticker. You can put it on your vehicle, you can put it on your door of your house, and if you have an emergency and law enforcement responds, a law enforcement officer, firefighter, EMT can scan that QR code. That QR code goes to the home police agency of where the contact information for that special needs person is kept, and we can communicate. We can get contact information, we can get medical providers, whatever we need. And thankfully, we've been able to expand it to, I believe, Sergeant Macon could help me, I think we're at 10 other departments between the Kent PD, we have a couple departments in Westchester, Orange County. Recently, we just expanded it. We have a couple departments in Massachusetts that picked it up. So it's gaining a little steam, and it is another method that we use to help keep those in our special needs community safe. So I'd like to thank you for your time, and have a good night.
Thank you, Chief Hoffman. Just one other thing I want to put out there is that whenever there's an emergency at one of our buildings, probably one of the hardest things to do as a parent is not to call the building or not go to the building. And what we're asking is that, and law enforcement will agree to this, is that in an emergency situation at one of the buildings, it's going to be locked down. We need to keep our phone lines open. And in a few moments, you're going to hear a little bit about how we have a reunification site where students would be brought to, and that's where parents can meet. So we're asking that in all emergency situations, please don't call the school, please don't come to the school. And probably one of the hardest pieces too is don't call your child, because if that phone goes off and someone's coming down the hallway, it might direct them to that classroom. So some things to really think about, hard to do, but important. A little information on Town of Carmel Police Department is there. And now we're going to transition to Frank Guglieri, who's been kind of like my mentor through a lot of this. Frank.
Take this off. Good evening, everyone. It's going to be hard to battle a little cleanup, so I'm going to try to go as quick as possible and be as concise as possible. Just really quick, and I hope you don't mind, Troy, just a couple of things. We talk about partnerships, we talk about communication. One of the things I really just want to, stress that at the end of the night, everybody's talking to everybody all the time. Probably the best thing that I could say, working with MAYAPAC, excuse me, is we're on the phone all the time, whether it's a crisis, whether it's something going on. Two of the things that are really not part of this presentation is we have a regional crisis team and we have an administrative regional crisis team made up of clinicians at the regional crisis team level and administrators at the administrative regional crisis team level that are willing and able to respond 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, if there is a crisis in a school, with a school community member, whether it's a staff member, a student, or whatever it may be. So, MAYAPAC has been a big supporter of that, at least for the 8 years that I've been here. On top of that, we're also part of the Handle with Care program, and I do want to thank Sheriff McConville. I also want to thank Chief Hoffman and especially Sergeant McComb, because they are communicating anytime there's a call of service to a house with a school-age child present. They are letting me know, not any confidential information, but they're letting me know demographic information so I can say to MAYAPAC Central School District, Ben August, Handle with Care. So they know that if Ben doesn't come in with his homework or something like that, they are going to just support that student in their need. It could be for a fire alarm that went off at 5 a.m. It could be for a parent who had a medical emergency at night. It could be for domestic dispute. It could be for any myriad of reasons. It could be because their house burned down, right? So for all of those reasons, we have these programs that are in place that sometimes you don't see behind the scenes, right? And we talk about the before, during, and after. So what I'm going to talk about today is a little bit of the after of an event, right? So Troy, talked about it a little bit, saying the reunification plan, right? So one of the things that I want you to realize is when you have a school incident that sometimes affects either part of the school or the whole school, there may be a need, and we all know this, right? Because we've seen snow emergencies, we've seen, water and plumbing emergencies, right? We have your normal dismissal, you have your early dismissal, and we also have a tool in our toolkit called a late dismissal, right? So if we can't dismiss for whatever reason, we'll dismiss like normal, just an hour or two later, right? Might be a little bit upsetting for the students, right, that they're stuck at school for an extra hour or two, but it's something that we can do. In the event that we can't do a late dismissal, there is something called a reunification plan. And basically what a reunification plan is, it's basically set up to get students connected back with their families in a safe and controlled manner. That's really what it's for. In the 8 years I've been in this position, I've had to run 6 reunification events. All were non-violent, and they were non-school related events. So law enforcement activity in the community, right? So it was like a bank robbery. The kids couldn't dismiss because they didn't want kids going home because they didn't locate the suspects, right? Things like that. Just so you know, for a full school, normally what it is about 5 hours if you're reunifying a full school when it's a non-violent, non-school related event. Mostly that's because of traffic and waiting for people to get here. Some of you may remember there was the accident that actually the sheriff's dealt with on Route 9 impacted Route 9D, which is where Garrison is located. Again, very small school, same thing. Took about 5 hours for that last student to get home, and it only impacted 2 bus runs of students. Right, so again, just to, you were saying a little bit more, just to, for some things, food for thought when you leave here, this is kind of what we deal with on, our planning basis, right? So when you have a protective action, right, and it can be for a nonviolent event, it could unfortunately also be for a violent event, right? What the students will see is one of those protective actions that Troy talked about. Shelter in place, hold in place, lockdown, one of those types of things. And then, if it is, depending on the situation, a violent event, those students will be relocated to a different part of the building and then potentially located to a different place in the community. Those places are kept confidential. One of the reasons why is because we're moving our students there. We have to make sure that location is safe, right? Sometimes we would be reunifying from our own buildings, right? In the case when we had law enforcement activity, and this usually happens a lot, in the community, you have something going on in a specific neighborhood, you're not going to send kids home to that neighborhood. You're going to let parents know, hey, come to the building to pick up your kid. And we're going to let you sign your kid out, and we're going to provide whatever services we need. The services might just be bathroom, food, and water, right? Or they might be some, medication a little bit later on in the day as the day gets on. It might be some dysregulation because they're not used to, staying in school so late. So those mental health services would be provided, and the medical services as well, if they're needed. And on top of that, that's where BOCES comes in, that's where community mental health comes in, that's where our law enforcement partners come in, right? We all do this work and this planning together. So that's what it kind of looks like from a student perspective. From a parent's perspective, which is really what the goal of my talk tonight is, we kind of want you to see this in the quote-unquote worst-case scenario where you're put through all of the steps of a reunification process, right? So you would be arriving to a site, whether it's a school building, whether it's a building that's not MAYAPAC owned, it could be anywhere around the community, but basically you'll arrive in your car, you'll be directed to a certain location and directed to a certain entrance to the building, right? You'll be asked to have identification out, right? Because we want to make sure you belong in the building, we want to make sure you have custody. That's where the custody verification comes in, and then you're allowed into the building. Okay, you'll be brought to a staging area, and then basically the accountant will know where your students are waiting for you to be picked up, and you will have a runner that will bring you to your student to be reunified. And then you'll be given any last minute information, and then you'll be escorted out. And it's kind of like this big round robin process. But it's very controlled and very important that you understand that as we go through this process, we have to make sure that at all points, all the students are safe. Right? And again, depending on what incident has caused us to go to reunification, that kind of lies on a spectrum. So just some high points I want people to understand. Reunification is always a last option, right? Normal dismissal, early dismissal, late dismissal. If we can't do any of those, then we go to reunification, okay? Your identification is paramount. Please make sure what student management system you have? Infinite Campus, right? So in Infinite Campus, please make sure all your information is up to date, right? Just again, some food for thought, right? Grandma might be the person that you trust to make a certain decision about your child, but grandma might also live an hour away, right? So in the event of an emergency, if your child goes home with the neighbor every day, right, it might be important to have them as listed as an emergency contact, right? Some practical things like that, sometimes it's helpful. If your student has any special needs, right, obviously the building is working to prepare for all of those needs, but sometimes, to understand those considerations and maybe have a conversation with the building principal, the teacher, the special ed teacher, whoever that may be, their school counselor, right, to just let them know that, hey, look, if this was going to go on for 5 hours, this is something that I know that would work with my son or daughter, right? And then again, from the talk a little while ago from Chief Hoffman, right? What do we need from parents in emergency is remember, they had to try to keep that site safe and secure, right? So, if you get some information and, you're tempted to share it on social media because you want to help other parents, we ask you to refrain because sometimes that information gets way too far, way too fast, right? And sometimes it's uncontrolled. And, if you want to see anything that has happened on the news where reunification, just most recently, right, in Tennessee with the Antioch High School incident that just happened, right? They had to go through reunification as well, and they were really trying to control that information going out. So it's just important that you get the verified, factual information. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Just two things I just want to kind of highlight real quick. You heard him talk about making sure that the information in Infinite Campus as far as contact information is and emergency contact information is up to date. Because if you're going to send someone to pick up the child in a reunification and they're not listed in Infinite Campus, we're not going to release that child to that person. Okay, so it's important that you make sure that those are up to date and accurate. And then you'll also hear that Frank said that we have reunification could take place in one of our buildings or in a building outside of the district. We have those all established. We have memorandums of agreements in place for those with those buildings, and we've also created staging sites where we have memorandums of agreements with certain buildings where if buses cannot make it to a building due to an incident, the students and staff would walk to this staging site and be picked up by the buses. So a lot of work went into that. We're really happy about that. So now I'm going to hand it back off to Benjamin August, our Director of Technology.
Thank you, I'm back. Since we're emphasizing the importance of maintaining up-to-date emergency contact information in Infinite Campus, I would just like to highlight that this spring, the district will launch a system of annual updates that assist all of our families with updating that information on a really timely way. And we'll be distributing materials so that it's really easy to follow the steps, and it's not something that you have to jump through hoops in order to do. It's going to be something where when you log into the parent portal, you'll be able to follow a series of steps, update the information, review it to make sure that it's accurate, and then you can have peace of mind to make sure that there's nothing that you missed. I speak now in my capacity as the district's data protection officer, and that's in the interest of talking to you a little bit about the cybersecurity side of safety. So I got to speak earlier about the physical security systems that the district has put in place, which are operated and supervised by technology, and those include the locks that can lock electronically and the speakers that will be triggered by the lockdown system so that everybody in the district knows what's going on instantaneously. And that's because so many of the systems that we've heard about tonight, including PC-TAM and many of the different things we've heard about, depend on technology to transmit information quickly to the right people at the right time. And that's why the cybersecurity side of safety is so important to think about, because there are so many things that technology enable for us, and there's also opportunities through cybersecurity threats for things to go wrong in ways that we never had to think about before. Before we had electronic locks, we didn't have to worry about someone hacking a door key because you either had a key or you didn't. And before we received reports through PC-TAM, we didn't need to worry about someone pretending to be a parent making a false report because there were other opportunities to physically verify the information that was coming in. So within the district, we have many processes to monitor and react to cybersecurity threats. We're blessed in Mayapack to have many very experienced technicians who work with the district to monitor our cybersecurity and network activity every single day, and they monitor for suspicious activity. And that's important because with so many different things happening on our computer network and with it increasing every day, with so many different instructional tools being used by our teachers, it's really impossible to supervise everything. What you have to do instead is monitor for the things that don't match. And our team at Mayapack is really experienced in using the tools that we have available to quickly highlight and troubleshoot when something doesn't quite fit. And what that can look like is an alert that a student email account is trying to do something that it's never done before. And so what you do is you quarantine, and then you react to that, and then you reestablish access with the correct person. We've also got a lot of work ahead of us with educating people about the ways that they need to take steps to protect themselves when they're using digital technology. And we hear about things like phishing all the time, where someone will try to trick you into giving away your password, or try to get you to click on a URL in an attachment that will get your device to give up information that you didn't intend to give up. And some of the things that we can teach people how to use to protect themselves are to never reuse passwords, even though it's tempting. One of the risks that happens when phishing is successful is that you'll get tricked, and it happens to everybody, and someone will successfully get your password. And that's a bad thing, because they can use that password to log into whatever account that password goes to. And it's many times worse if that same password will unlock other accounts too. So that's why password reuse is something that we always teach all of our teachers, all of our students, to be really thoughtful about. And it includes simple modifications to your password, like adding an additional number at the end of the password is one that's common. We work with people all the time to try to think about how can you come up with memorable passwords that are different for each service. And if you truly want to do that, then really you need to use a password manager to help you to remember them. And this is like that intermediate level of digital security that we teach our students and faculty to try to use. Using a password manager is a way to have strong passwords that are so secure that even you can't remember them. And that's really the best practice, because that way you can make sure that your password is unique and very strong and impossible for even you to remember, and you can depend on the really powerful security in your phone, in your pocket, to guard that password for you, at the cost of the inconvenience, right, of having to pull out your phone and look it up and then type it in every single time. So there's always that balance between convenience and safe cybersecurity practices. That speaks to the growing awareness of the need to learn some of these strategies to make sure that as we use more and more technologies and we expose our students to more and more different tools in their learning, we also teach them about the tools and strategies that they need to be aware of in order to keep themselves safe in their digital activities. Now that becomes even more important in the last few years as large language models and AI-generated systems become cheap and easy to operate for any person. Because what those systems enable is a whole new class of things that we never had to worry about before. We've seen reported in the media situations where people receive a phone call from a voice they recognize, and it later turns out that was a computer-generated voice, it wasn't the person at all. Now that's very confronting and scary, because you can't protect about everything, you can't be suspicious every moment of your life, but it's important to try to build an awareness and a curiosity around what the new technology enables, so that if you get a call that really strikes you as this doesn't seem quite right, then you'll be able to take a backup plan and try to ask that additional question of, does this make sense and what can I do in this moment? And that brings me to my last bullet point, data protection processes to ensure accountability from software vendors. So this is critical, and in my role of data protection officer, sometimes I have to tell our teachers that they won't be able to use that tool that they're excited about in their classroom, because as technology becomes more powerful, it also requires more information from us in order to make it personalized and effective. So a technology company needs to know the names and email addresses of our students in order to create the accounts that they log into in order to use the service. But if that company hasn't done due diligence around protecting their databases and make sure that their employees are using phishing-resistant tools and they're using MFA to make sure that they will have passwords that are strong, that means that the information about our students can be lost through no fault of any person in the district, but instead some company that's running a tool, then they didn't do their due diligence. And for that reason, we require all of the companies that we work with to make strong, legally binding guarantees around the set of practices that they use to protect student information. And more we're going to see that New York State, which is wonderful, is taking firm action to make sure that districts are really aggressive in protecting student data privacy, because once student data is lost through one data breach, you really can't put that back. So it's really important that schools do their part in requiring that companies secure the information that are being used in order to provide these educational tools. And with that, I'll pass it back to Troy.
Okay, so as we bring closure to our symposium tonight, I wanted to kind of briefly talk about some of the highlights when it comes to safety initiatives for the upcoming year. So you heard me earlier talk a little bit about phase 2 implementation of Armored 1. We're going to target all doorway windows and cafeteria windows. We're also right now becoming ADA compliant with signage throughout all of our buildings when it comes to labeling the interior and exterior doors. Also the rooms within the classrooms, and we're also utilizing fast signs to create a privacy film that will go on our cafeteria windows where you can't see in from the outside, but you can see out from the inside. And so that just helps to provide a little bit more protection to those individuals in the cafeteria. We're also teaming up with CRG again to transfer all of our evacuation maps and our reunification maps. And so under CRG mapping, we're gonna have most of our emergency maps under one system, which is great. We're also working with School Safety Solution to install lockdown shades in the classrooms. So in addition to the corrective actions that staff members and students take in a lockdown, one of them will be going to the window that is on a door or the window that's near a door, unhooking a latch that drops down, and then this way someone in the hallway can't see in. And so that was a piece that we felt was important. We're also looking to increase security presence at night and for after-school programming, like in our elementaries. Our security leaves and the program is still going on, so we're looking to see if we can kind of bridge that gap. And then the last piece here that we're highlighting is we're looking to train all administrators on how to use an AED. When it comes to sporting events, you know, you have coaches, you've got the athletic trainer there, but when it comes to like a concert or a play in the auditorium, we want to make sure that usually it's our administrators are there and that they're aware on how to administer and use an AED. One piece that didn't make the presentation that I just want to kind of highlight real quick is the school district is working with Homeland Security, and his name is Jose De Santos, and they're going to be doing 3D mapping of every building in our district during the February break. And this is just another layer. We have CRG mapping, but now we'll have 3D image mapping within the buildings where it's kind of like if you ever saw an online look at a house for sale, you're able to kind of walk through the rooms, walk through the building, walk through the exterior. We're going to have that as well, and that's going to be very beneficial to our law enforcement as a plan to get to understand the layout of the buildings and things of that nature. So at this point, we're bringing closure to this. I placed a QR code there. If you have questions, we ask that you click on that QR code and it goes to a Google form. Those questions will go to me. We're also here at the end of the presentation. If anyone wants to approach one of our presenters with a question, we'll open that up. And before I forget, I want to say special thank you to the technology team for all you did today in setting this up. Appreciate it. How about a round of applause for those guys too? So this brings closure to our presentation. I want to thank all of our presenters tonight. I want to thank all of you for coming out, and we look forward to improving safety and protocols within our district. Have a nice evening. Thank you.